Okay, welcome everyone, and there will be a series of welcomes here today. Can everyone hear me okay? Yeah, okay, fantastic. Well, I'm absolutely delighted to see so many of you here for our second of the series of the conversations with our businesses, with this one particularly focusing on arts and culture. So I'm absolutely delighted to see you all. By way of starting, I think I need to begin with the hygiene factors, and they are that the toilets for the gentleman is down the far right there, and the ladies is just on the left. As for fire or bomb alerts, there are no scheduled fire or bomb alerts. So if you do hear the alarm, then the evacuation points are to the right here, to the left there, or to the back, and then everyone meets into the top left-hand corner of the car park as we leave this building. So just be aware of those. And just before I hand over to Councillor Stuart Munro, I would just like to give a big thank you to the Berkshire Film Office, who will be stationed over in the corner, that bank of tables there, and they're looking for businesses wanting to get involved in the film industry. So if you've got ambitions of being an extra, sign up, but I'm sure that you might be able to get involved in the supply chain in other ways. They're also, I don't know if people are aware, but they're working at Wokingham for under the series called Places in the Sun. So it's like irony that they've turned up today, but we will do a better job next time you're here. We also have More Arts, who are a voluntary organisation to support the arts, and they loan out pieces of art for businesses and other organisations. We have the Wokingham Theatre, who are a local voluntary theatre group and quite active in the community. We also have the Art Society, and indeed a guest speaker here will tell you more about that. We have Wokingham Libraries, who are quite notable in their work around children's literary, and actually run a festival to encourage literacy for children. And we have, I'm pleased to say also, the East Berkshire Operative Society, who are almost here to give a performance, but unfortunately that couldn't quite happen. But maybe the sole representative might give us a little rendition of his own, but we'll see later on. So I think no more from me at this stage. I just really want to now invite Councillor Stuart Munro to say a word.
Morning everybody, and thank you for coming on this rather unpleasant summer day. I think it was summer yesterday. As Graham said, I'm Stuart Munro and I'm the Executive Member for Business, so that's really why we'd like to try and promote engagement with our businesses with these regular sessions. I'm pleased to say that we had a very successful one in the middle of the year as well, which was a sort of breakfast meeting, and we really welcome the feedback. And a little plug here for Gary's regular business bulletins, and if you're not getting those regular business bulletins, please see Gary on the right here and sign you up, and we distribute those to you by email. Again, thank you to all of our arts people. As Graham has said, the focus today is on arts and culture, but very important it is that we engage with our businesses, and our objective is to get lots of dialogue going with our business. It's very important to us, not just because we collect business rates from our business, but we want to integrate with those businesses to understand how we can help them and encourage them to stay and more to come to Wokingham Borough. So that's the purpose of our sessions. I'd just also like to say, and I'm also apologising that I unfortunately won't be here at the end to say thank you to you all. Unfortunately, I've got to go to another event in Reading. So apologies for not being here at the end, but the good news is that our new leader, John Ossoll, will be coming later, and I'm sure he'll be able to say a few words to you at the end. So no more from me, but again, thank you for coming, and again, back to you, Graham. Thank you.
Okay, so here's the agenda for the day. We've just had the introduction from Councillor Stuart Munro. Then I will move into what I think is quite an important bit. I tried to keep it brief, but I think it's important for us to say we had a conversation with the business community last year, and this is what we've done in response to that. So that's the purpose of that piece there. But most importantly, this session is about hearing from our keynote speakers to our left that I'll introduce later on. And their sessions are really to set a context for the conversations we're going to have amongst ourselves. And those conversations will take place in what's called a World Cafe style, and I'll explain that later. But the real substance of this meeting is about the conversations we have together around the tables based on or steered by three really important questions to the business community. Then we'll have, after lunch, we'll move to a very informal networking and closed opportunity so people can chat, mingle, drink more coffee or whatever there is available between 3:30 and 4:30, and then we'll look to close then. So this is generally a very informal event, albeit it has some type of structure to it. It's about you feeling you can input, you can shape, and indeed maybe put forward your ideas or even have the opportunity to take forward some of your ideas. So now on to the recap from where we were last year. Last March we delivered an event at the Thames Valley Science Park. It was March last year, and the weather was pretty similar, to be fair. And it was a very well-engaged event. We had as many, probably more, than we have here, and it was about that first conversation of really significant beginning of what we call our branding, fit for businesses, let's talk amongst ourselves as the business community. And sorry, I hadn't introduced myself. My name's Graham Evers. I'm the Deputy Chief Executive at Wokingham Borough Council. These are the things that you raised. I'm not going to read all those off. You can read those. This is what you, as the business community, said was important in terms of what we can do, both in terms of us as a partnership, but us as individual organisations. So clearly Wokingham Borough Council have a clear key role to play. So we're very conscious of what can we do about these things. So we do some of these things on our own, but also we do many of these things in partnership. And just quickly going through these, provision of affordable housing on the top of the list. Wasn't actually in priority order, but was considered to be very important by itself. We have delivered 482 new affordable homes in 17-18, and that was seen to be absolutely critical in making it affordable for the workforce, key skilled workers to be in that business, nearby the business community, and therefore to be able to be useful and accessible employers within Wokingham Borough. So we're actually one of the front runners in Berkshire on this. Some of our neighbouring authorities, even I think, believe the likes of Reading, numbers nearer 42. I think Slough, 100 odd, West Berkshire might be in that region. So by some margin, Wokingham have made a significant contribution here. In addition, 22 key worker apartments in Peach Place, and we're also developing our own affordable self-build scheme, which I believe has up to about 21 plots on that. So we're trying to do what we can to make housing affordable in the borough, which of course is, as we know, quite a challenge given the house prices in our locality. The other thing that you said was really important was around you having access to where you go to get support. Well, we've employed, we used to have a part-time economic development officer. Many of you, well, you should all know, Gary, over there, who's our full-time economic development officer, and that was important. That was very symbolic in terms of showing we care about the business community. We need to resource that in order to connect, reach out to you, create those communication channels to and fro, keep each other in the loop of what's important. So Gary's been absolutely instrumental in that, and yes, I would be disappointed if you hadn't heard of him. But it seems like you have, so that's good. We also help through signposting for sources of funding and training. But the Business Growth Hub is a key area to signpost to, which obviously falls under the auspices of the Thames Valley Berkshire LEP. So that's really important I think predominantly around helping small businesses. And indeed we have the Innovation Catalyst. So the kind of the particular offers that I'm just going to go into some detail. So the Business Growth Hub primarily for small business support, for funding and for advice if people weren't aware of the particular offers there. And the Innovation Catalyst, which is sponsored by Barclays, and its main focus is to help businesses turn ideas into commercial offers and co-working amongst businesses. And then, of course, there's other funding sources like the government and European social funding. It's about being able to signpost and help where those particular opportunities are, which are usually around pump priming opportunities to get businesses going. We also have what we call the Strive programme, which focuses on social tenants, and it's been pretty successful in that we've had 20 social tenants completed that particular startup course, and 7 of those, which is actually quite a high percentage if you think what's involved, it's 7 of those that have set up their own successful businesses. So we're really quite proud of that, because that's a really important sector to attend to. Okay, this is more on the, as I alluded to before, on the business engagement. We had the Fit for Business event 2018. We've got this one today. We intend to have a meeting 3 times a year in addition to this one, as an opportunity to come together, network, talk, discuss what's important and see how we can move things forward. So that will be the programme from here on in. We also, that's already Councillor Stuart Munro referred to, was the e-bulletin that we established, and I believe, is it 3 a month that we do on these? E-bulletins?
They could even be more.
Could even be more. So it's at least 3 a month, so that's important. It means those regular dialogue is going on through those bulletins. We've got put a special page on the council's website, and the hopefully, in time, I hope that will be more interactive, and we'll have that as a discussion board. But at the moment, it's there to tell you what's going on and signpost. And like I say, much more engagement, particularly through Gary. And I know that we have a plan to set up a business partnership forum, which will be business-led. So we will help, we will coordinate, we will do what we can to make that happen. But it's important that it's business-led. And because it is about the business community, and who knows better than the businesses. Just other 2 points of significant collaboration or consultation that's been undertaken is the Wokingham Borough Council Plan, which is intended to set out our strategic objectives over a 3-year horizon. And we had an event in this very room here several months ago, and we had business representatives here. And that was a very fruitful conversation as well. And indeed with the local plan update that we will ultimately need to arrive at, a local plan sometime later this year, but we have engaged with the business where we have been able to take aboard what's important in terms of determining our housing delivery going forward. Just a short slide here. We know, don't we, that Wokingham is in a prime location, what with the M4, the M3, the motorways, whereas Heathrow, Gatwick's not that far away either. And we've got a great skilled workforce, and we have many working for international organisations. What I'd say for Wokinham's perspective and our contribution over the year, we have put a huge investment into roads and transport and housing. And that would, for example, we had a capital programme that we delivered last year that was in excess of £120 million. It was by far our biggest investment in the community, and a primary or key focus areas or investment areas in that programme were the roads, infrastructure and general transport improvements, housing, and obviously the schools we need in our community as well. So all these things we believe are critical to make this a destination place for businesses. Again, we talked last time about apprenticeships and how important they were, and I was just having a discussion with someone in the audience who from the Reading University, and actually I think we'd all agree this is a really important say different pathway into businesses, and the businesses were very clear that they thought that too, and I think some of the terminology was through apprenticeships people turn up business ready. They have become attuned, accustomed to how the workplace, the demands of the workplace, the social skills required in the workplace and that type of thing. So Wokingham itself, obviously it needs to walk the talk, and Wokingham therefore we've been absolutely focused on trying to be a key employer ourselves through the apprenticeship programme, probably incentivised by a significant levy we have to pay, but nonetheless I'm sure there are good virtues for doing it, and we know that anyway. It's about providing a really valuable development opportunity for those who wouldn't necessarily choose the traditional routes of degree, or indeed actually think that this provides actually a quicker leg up into the business community and their career pathway, rather than taking time out to undertake the more traditional forms of education and development. So we've done that ourselves. We've also worked with schools to try and help schools see this as a very legitimate and helpful path for not just the apprentices, the individuals, but for to create a supply for our business community. And we've worked with businesses to help them recruit apprenticeships, and we've supported some of their training and promotional events that they've run. And we indeed run Elevate Wokingham, which is trying to help those who find it most difficult to find a career path and a route into businesses and potentially into apprenticeships. So we understand this is really important. Our businesses need the skilled workforce, and it would be fantastic if we can find that skilled workforce from our local community. Right, now on to, you'll probably be pleased to hear, the final slide from me for now. Another thing you said when we met last year was arts and culture is absolutely important. It's about creating a sense of identity, a sense of branding, a sense of civility, I suppose. And that's really, we can see from the stats there that it's one of the, if not the fastest growing products, areas. It's moving from 100 billion in 2018 to a predicted 150 billion in 2023. As we know, I think we've known over the period of time with the different parts of the country that have had a focus on arts and culture. We've seen it in Birmingham, we've seen it in Manchester, we've seen it in other places. And it's, so here's a great opportune discussion we can have now about how can we improve the arts and culture offer for Wokingham Borough Council, and indeed its appeal, its attraction, its presence. And I think we need to recognise in all of that an awful lot already goes on. So when we say let's enter into this conversation, we are not for 1 minute saying there are not a load of fantastic things that go on across the borough. So it's about what can we build upon, what can we connect better across the borough, what can we promote better, how can we make Wokingham feel an even stronger sense of that community and arts and culture offer. So that's really in our gift now to embrace these conversations and see what we can create. And we will do what we did last year, and we'll take these away, and I'll go into a bit more detail. But whatever is said, we'll capture, take away, and we'll see what we can turn into a reality, a difference on the ground. So this is, yes, this is your slot, and really what I'm going to do now is hand over to the keynote speakers, and I'm absolutely delighted to say we have Charlotte Jeeves, who's the Chief Executive of the Henley Festival, who will talk for about 15 minutes around her thoughts around the area of arts and culture. Then we'll move along to Dominic Unsworth from the Berkshire Film Commission, and also on the Thames Valley Berkshire LEP, so very active in our business community. And then Robin Cox. Where's Robin gone? Robin, who's at the back there, who will then do the last 15 minutes slot on the Art Society in Woking. So these are, I'm very delighted. Thank you so much in advance for you giving your time up today and convey what your version of the world, your perspective of arts and culture, and how that can impact positively from a Woking Borough Council and business context. And this will set the scene for the discussions we have beyond. So I'll say no more and hand over to Charlotte. And do you want a mic? Or?
I'll use your. So, hello everyone. Right, I've got a clicker, which I'm not used to using, so forgive me if I. Great. So I am Charlotte Jeeves. I am the Chief Executive of Henley Festival. I've been there for 5 years. We're just about to deliver our 5th festival on the 10th of July. Whilst we are based in Henley and our organisation is based therefore in Oxfordshire, our festival actually takes place on the Berkshire side of the river. So we are licensed by Woking District Council. So we have a foot in both camps as such, in South Oxfordshire and also in Woking District Council. So hence the reason I'm here today. I have worked extensively in arts organisations for the past 20 years. I spent a long time in London working in different subsidised sector arts organisations ranging from the Globe to Young Vic to Sadler's Wells, and then I went off and started working on festivals. I went to Salisbury and ran their Salisbury International Arts Festival. I moved to Bristol, ran a film festival for the TV and film industry, and over the last 5 years I've been in Henley. So we as an organisation, our turnover isn't huge. We turn over 2.7 million a year. We don't get any statutory funding at all, not from the Arts Council, not from any district council at all. That's not necessarily a bad thing, that's just because the kind of activity that we are doing doesn't necessarily warrant statutory funding. There are much better organisations, much bigger organisations that should warrant statutory funding, and we're not necessarily delivering the kind of activity that would warrant statutory funding. So our main amounts of funding come from our ticket sales, from ancillary bits of income, and also from corporate sponsors and individual giving. So we work a lot with businesses across the Thames Valley and into London. So I'm here today to talk about cultural identity and developing cultural identity, and how closer linkages and partnerships could be mutually beneficial. So I'll give you a brief overview of what Henley Festival is, just in case you don't know what we do. So we're a black tie festival which takes place over 5 days. It's a unique event. We embrace a vibrant programme from pop to world music, classical to jazz, where art and gastronomy share equal billing with music. We are as passionate about making a difference as we are about creating the best ingredients for our festival year on year. As a team, we strive to merge great music, food, comedy and art into unique experiences that create unforgettable memories for our guests, sponsors and partners. Supporting young, local, emerging talent and local charities is something we're really proud to be part of, because our community helps define us and helps shape what we do with the festival and our charities each year. We believe that anyone that comes into contact with our festival is important, be it a member of our team, a performing artist, a guest, or someone that benefits from the support of any of our chosen charities. We never lose touch with the reason why we set the festival up in the first place, to give others the support and opportunity to feel special too. We're quite unique in what we do. Whilst we are an arts organisation and we are delivering a 5-day festival, we also support 2 charities a year over a 3-year period, and we give out grants to those organisations to deliver on-the-ground work that we would never be able to do as an organisation ourselves. And currently we work with the Teenage Wilderness Trust, which is a local charity in Henley. They do specific intervention work with teenagers who have been excluded from society. So we fund them with a grant programme on an annual basis. And we work with the Charlie Waller Memorial Trust, who are based in Thiel. They go into schools across the UK and raise awareness in young people about mental health issues. So they're both incredible organisations, and I'm really proud that we as an organisation deliver grant contributions to those organisations to enable them to continue doing the work that they do. Right, I'll just show you a brief photo of the festival site. So we actually take place on the same site as the Henley Royal Regatta, and the Henley Royal Regatta are our licence holders, so are our landlords as such. So if it looks familiar to you, that's because for 167 years the Henley Royal Regatta has been taking place, and we've been inhabiting that space for 38 years. So, developing our cultural identity. So there is now widespread acknowledgement of the importance of cultural activity, that cultural activity has on the lives of people, community and places. The question is, how do councils use culture to create a shared sense of identity and a purpose in the areas, and how to tackle the issues of the day? So the Culture White Paper, published by the Department of Culture, Media and Sport in 2016, acknowledged the role played by cultural activity in an individual's physical and mental health, education and life chances, as well as driving local economic growth and community cohesion. The public sector, voluntary and community sector, and businesses all play an important part in placemaking. Local government remains the most significant funder of culture and is most attuned to local needs. Councils are well placed to lead local action to achieve outcomes around culture and placemaking. Every community has its own cultural identity, a shared history, infrastructure and traditions. What is local and unique has a special value and should be supported and encouraged. Cultural identity is strongly tied in a person's sense of engagement, belonging, understanding and appreciation of their place. Placemaking capitalises on a community's unique assets, inspiration and potential, with the intention of creating public spaces, events and activities that promote people's health, happiness and well-being. We need to look at how we develop political leadership using cultural activities to bring about positive changes to places. Looking at Henley Festival and other cultural organisations within Berkshire, we can see how we can draw on its cultural and historic strengths to tackle modern issues. I plan to show you how arts and culture can be used to improve a wide range of measurable outcomes, from education and well-being to economic growth and community cohesion. Now, Leeds City Council have done quite a lot of work around cultural identity, and they have defined culture. They've said culture is what we do and who we are, encompassing a broad range of actions and activities which have the capacity to transform, challenge, reassure and inspire, giving a place and its people a unique, distinctive identity. So, how do we go about this? The best way to go about this is develop a cultural strategy. Using a co-production model to develop a cultural strategy. And what I mean with a co-production model is, it's not just about the arts organisations and the cultural organisations leading this, it's about businesses collaborating, communities collaborating, and arts organisations all collaborating together to drive the sort of agenda forward. The starting place is with the Woking District Council, all the political parties, Thames Valley, Berkshire LEP, West Berkshire District Council, and all the other unitary authorities that are in this area. You need to place culture at the heart of all policy making, involve extensive consultation with the cultural sector, interview those in the cultural sector, and develop it further with meetings, focus groups, presentations and workshops in the community, along with the online and social media activity. Now, who do you engage with? So the arts sector, those whose business it is to create, host and promote the arts and cultural offer of the place that, and the culture offer of the city, be they large organisations, individual artists and performers, or community groups and collectives. Cultural organisations from professional sports clubs, restaurants, food and drink societies, small independent businesses, big venues to local interest groups, volunteer networks, galas, craft groups and markets, the heritage sector, So the Heritage Lottery Fund, Reading Civic Society, all the clubs and societies, residents of Wokingham and West Berkshire, people who live in communities across the city, young and old, community leaders, activists, social groups, regardless of whether or not they engage with what they consider to be cultural activities. Children and young people, marginalised groups, the education sector, the commercial business sector, the regeneration and development community, so property developers, land agents, the tourism industry, health authorities from the NHS to the hospitals, and charities, trusts and foundations. So in effect, the entire spectrum of people that you need to engage with when you're looking at cultural identity. And then what I've done is I've, based on that, and based on the fact that you develop a cultural identity with all of those players into the mix, all of those players, what I've done is I've thought about some ideas in which how you could sort of promote and drive the cultural identity and drive cultural activity within Wokingham District Council and within the surrounding area. So, the challenge is to ensure that culture is instantly visible in our spaces and streets. We recognise that our public spaces are not spaces in which we dwell, but instead have become thoroughfares that we rush through to on our way to work, or spaces we pass through on our way to meet family and friends rather than meeting points in themselves. While some of the spaces host events, when the events are gone, these spaces can feel empty and barren. Our streets do not always feel safe, often catering more for cars and vehicle traffic than they do for peoples and families. Through the cultural strategy, Wokingham can set a bold new vision for its public spaces to become its greatest cultural asset. The new spaces strategy could include a cultural response ensuring that ambition for these spaces to become cultural assets remains a driving force in how they are developed, taking in events, animation, public art and creative design to invite play, creative green spaces improving health and well-being and inviting the people of Wokingham and West Berkshire to reconnect with its centre. In West Berkshire, we are blessed with energetic, creative and visionary artistic directors across our cultural organisations and festivals. Invite them to use the stages and canvases as their own. But in order to do this, you must consider culture at the start of the spaces being created and commissioned, making sure that small things like power is available, lighting can be flexible, and giving consideration to the audience experience from the very beginning. At Henley Festival, we create an environment where people can explore, roam and play using large-scale art installations, 2D and 3D art. We've developed our art programme over the last 4 years to great success and work with local and national artists to deliver the work. We understand that art in the right space enables people to relax, unwind, think openly and explore. And we work extensively with artists, commissioning work, bringing new work into Henley, bringing new work into the festival, but also working with artists who have established names, so that people don't feel frightened when they're engaging with art in the festival if it's not normally the space that they inhabit. We do, obviously, at the festival, do an enormous amount of music. Music is a huge part of what we do. We have a big floating stage. We put big pop musicians on stage. We put world music in. We put jazz in. We are more music than we are anything else. The music idea centralises around something else that we do. We currently, for the last 3 years, we've been working with BBC Music Introducing Berkshire, developing young, emerging talent and giving them a platform to perform at the festival, which is crucial to the start of their careers, putting them in an environment that they wouldn't normally be in, but enabling also our audience to see a breadth of talent, from the very, very young to the biggest icons of the likes of Elton John. So making music in West Berkshire better, create more opportunities, increase collaborations and raise awareness. The aim should be to explore, nurture and promote music in West Berkshire as an experience, as a business and as a cultural driver. Music's incredibly accessible. Everyone likes music. They might not necessarily like the same music, but everyone likes music, and what is brilliant about music is it breaks down every barrier. You can programme wide swathes of musical activity, and you can guarantee you'll get an audience for the majority of it, because people naturally don't feel frightened about engaging with music. There's a cultural innovation idea. So could Wokingham be the home of cultural innovation, where there's no demarcation between creative industries and the cultural sector, where STEAM, science, technology, engineering, arts and mathematics is standard, and the relationship between arts and technology is not only understood but actively nurtured and supported to flourish? Many arts organisations are adopting digital strategies as they seek to engage new audiences and communities. And new audiences and communities using online tools and channels as a mean of creating new products, formulating ideas and creating local movements, transforming where they live and raising awareness of the cultures they hold dear. We have a phenomenal and ever-expanding digital and tech sector in the Thames Valley that continues to gain national attention and welcome global companies from Microsoft to Vodafone. We need to consider how technology and data can better inform our choices, create new services and reconnect with communities. For the last 5 years, Henley Festival have developed its digital strategy. And it is where we do most of our promotion for the festival now. We use an external agency to help define our story. We use their expertise to promote the festival. And what this does is enables us to engage with large corporate partners like West Coast, Microsoft, Audi, which is a national partner. And in turn, what we do is we reach a wider community of individuals that make the festival more accessible in everything that we do. Working with corporate partners is integral to what we do, and it's the only way that we can reach the audiences that we want to reach, and it's the only way that we can do what we want to do. Without the support of the corporate partners, we wouldn't have a festival. So it's incredibly important to engage with businesses to enable you to achieve what you want to do from a cultural standpoint. So, communities of culture. So, we constantly meet people trying to make things happen and finding it hard. There are policy obstacles, stresses of navigating the maze of interconnected departments with local authority, a lack of expertise, knowledge and know-how for how to achieve cultural ideas, having big dreams but not knowing where to start, and some steep and off-putting learning curves. Communities of culture is about supporting anyone, whatever their age, background, experience or competence, to create a culture that is meaningful and relevant to them, and can be enjoyed on their doorstep with their community. Giving people a human contact, someone to talk to help them navigate through various systems and processes that can seem daunting, opening up networks and introducing people to others who have been here before, inspiring them, helping them shape their ideas and making it easier to create culture in Berkshire. This is not just about grants and funding, it's about making the district work better for its communities, understanding where some of the policies and approaches no longer work and finding ways to change this, ultimately providing a better system for getting things done, building toolkits, sharing ideas, knowledge and advice on how to build a city and a place of creators. Can working in District Council lead in the way of breaking down the barriers with the community? Can it open its doors, host a series of networking days with the community, where it lays out its ambition and invites those who want to develop their ideas in? So the changing landscape. So the world around us is changing, and councils are central to helping our communities adapt and move forward to be even stronger, healthier and more diverse. We are shifting away from our former role as providers of cultural services and thinking more fundamentally about how our communities operate, interact and develop. And in short, we are placemaking. And it's our responsibility to drive that placemaking, to ensure that culture thrives within all of our organisations. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Charlotte.
There we go, back at the beginning. Just stand by the mic. So, hi everyone, I'm Dominique Unsworth. Just a little bit of background on myself and who I am. So I run a social enterprise, a not-for-profit organisation, which is a community interest company. We're based in Berkshire in Slough, and this year is our 20th anniversary. And I founded the organisation in 1999 when I was a young person in a sort of business incubator in a youth centre in Slough. So not Berkshire born and bred, but the organisation has been operating from here for 20 years. And for the last 10 of those 20 years, it's been my personal ambition to bring together the 6 unitary authorities to establish a film office or a film commission. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about that project and the context of Resource Productions, where it came from, and why we think it's of economic importance and something that's possibly useful for your businesses and for people and organisations that you might be working with. It's really good to lead on from what Charlotte was saying about placemaking. As was said back in my introduction, I do run a not-for-profit. I also sit on the Thames Valley Berkshire LEP in the forum, and in that capacity I represent the community sector, so the voluntary sector, charities, not-for-profits. However, I'm pleased to say that more recently the LEP has been charged with central government to pay more attention to the creative industries, and I spent the whole of yesterday with the DCMS up in Birmingham, meeting with LEP representatives from all over who are now being asked to send forward creative industries, arts and cultural reps, because that's being viewed nationally as something important to consider in economic growth and productivity. So it's really exciting times for, particularly for us in Berkshire. because we've got lots of opportunities for national strategic growth in the area of creative industries. So against that backdrop, luckily I met some amazing officers this past year who were all kind of engaged in their local councils, and the 6 different councils came together and supported financial investment in establishing a film office. So essentially we were given a year of support to try and establish this office and make it sustainable. Realistically, 3 years is how long it takes to establish a film office. So I'll explain what it is and what we're trying to do. And we're trying to do a sort of super speed version of it in Berkshire. You can see all the councils that are involved and are supported up on the screen there. So Resource Productions, I've said, we are a not-for-profit. What our mission actually is to affect social change through film and TV and the arts, and to try and diversify the film industries. And the way that we do that is that we work with a diverse range of partners, from community groups to charities to faith organisations up and down the country, but with a focus on Berkshire and the South East. And we try and identify people who may not traditionally think of careers in the arts, culture or creative industries. There's a lot of talent, particularly in Berkshire, but in the broader region, that doesn't know they're talented because they're not aware of the jobs in the creative industries, they're not aware of how they can put their skills to use. And there's a big mismatch. There's massive gaps in the sector, there's loads of jobs that can't be filled, and there's lots of talent that doesn't know those jobs exist, and lots of families and schools and businesses who don't realise that actually we've got this growing skills gap as we move forward. So our aim is to match those 2 things up. And the way that we do that is threefold. The first thing we do is find that talent through outreach and engagement in the ways I've just described. The second thing we do is train them. We offer training, support, guidance, mentoring, coaching, kind of support with identifying your own skill set, confidence building, helping people look at arts as a hobby, but also how it might be something they can do to generate revenue for themselves, sustain themselves as a self-employed person, or go into a job in the mainstream industry. The second thing we do is work with our partners, which include Channel 4, BBC, and Pinewood Studios, just around the corner in South Bucks, and also in Shepperton, across the way over in Shepperton. And they work closely with us to look at the mainstream industry and to help us produce short-form content to let people have their first credit that might then go to broadcast, which enables people to establish themselves within a quite competitive sector, which is still quite elitist and nepotistic. And that goes across a lot of the arts and cultural industries. They're quite niche, and you need to know someone in order to get into the industry quite often. And what we try to do is open up the door by allowing people to make their first piece of artwork with us, or their first piece of content with a broadcaster. So we make that content. The third thing that we do is quite commercial, and that's where we started up, where we basically will make videos for anybody who wants them. We try and make sure they are aligned to our social mission, and that we're able to get some of our participants to then work on and get paid to work on those productions. So we'll do any kind of video production, but we predominantly work with not-for-profits, with NGOs, with government agencies, but also lots of private businesses. So that's the 3 things that we do: training, production, outreach and engagement. And we do that up and down the country and have worked for clients including BAFTA, the British Film Institute, Creative England and Screen Skills. So we're quite well known in our own little sector. So these are some of the people that we work with. So Pinewood is a big part of why I think we finally got the support from the 6 unitaries to do this. Because right now is a moment of opportunity. You may be aware that Pinewood has doubled in size over the last couple of years. They have extended across the road in South Bucks where they are. They've sort of doubled the size of their studio space and therefore their capacity to shoot film. And then on the other side of Berkshire, in Surrey, on the other outskirts, they've also just this year got permission to double the space of Shepperton Studios. What this means is that with Brexit and the drop of the pound, that studios from America have front-loaded rental agreements in both those studios for the next 10 years. So we're at the very, very start of a 10-year guaranteed growth in our locality, either side of Berkshire. And this is a unique window of opportunity in the next 3 years to get in there and to make sure that we have the services, the environment, the skills, the talent, the locations and the venues that this industry needs. And if we manage to crack that in the next 1 to 3 years, then we have a really good sustainable local model. Being just outside London, there's also a moment that's happening right now in terms of diversity. And by diversity, I mean regional. Shooting in London now is not looked upon well by a lot of the broadcasters, especially the publicly funded one. So at the moment, Channel 4 and BBC are now penalising producers of television content and also high-end TV and film if they shoot in London. That means you may not get your 5% back-end payment as a producer if you shoot in London. So they're encouraging you to shoot in the regions. And what better step out of London than Berkshire? So you can actually offer people the opportunity to make their back-end payment a lot easier to make if they're shooting in Wokingham. It's going to be a lot better and simpler for them. If everything they need is here, they're going to not have to worry about that final payment or just write it off because they've been shooting in London because they've been quite lazy. So obviously there's big players moving into Leeds, there's a big hub in Manchester. However, we are ultimately the answer to London. So it's a unique moment to sort of jump in and get on the bandwagon before anyone else does. So just for those of you that have never been on a shoot, it can be something quite chaotic and it can be something quite fun. This is actually a Channel 4 shoot that we did, which was all with Berkshire-based young emerging filmmakers aged 11 to 25. But it was commissioned by Channel 4, it goes onto their platform and everyone's paid and gets a credit. And actually this film got nominated for several awards at international film festivals. And this was just shot on a quiet residential street in Slough, in Berkshire, with all local cast and crew. And this is as simple as it can be. A load of people in high-vis vests wandering around with equipment, making sure that they've got permission to be on those streets, that the council has authorised that, if any traffic needs to be stopped, that permits have been put through. And ultimately, councils can charge for that. Not charge for the permission necessarily, it's in a public space, there's different licensing issues, but they can charge for the administration of having to deal with that problem of people standing on the edge of a street curb, outside residents' houses. There's a fair amount of administration that has to go into that, and production companies understand that and will negotiate on how much they'll pay for that. So just for permission to film in Wokingham or any other borough, there's an opportunity to generate revenue back into the council and to build on that. And this is the most simplest kind of way that you can do that. So what is a film commission or a film office? A commission is actually a little bit where we're headed towards, hopefully. The idea is that a commission actually works with big producers to come and encourage them to film in your region and also gives a financial incentive. That might be a discount, it might be free access. In the case of Berkshire Film Office, what we've done is ring-fenced just £10,000 of the money we've got this year to say if there is a producer that wants to shoot in this area and we collectively think that's going to bring something in terms of publicity, tourism, economic growth or productivity, that we can actually commission by putting money into that production. So the difference between a commission is sometimes you've got money to give and you've got in-kind assets that you can offer, whereas at the moment we are operating primarily as an office, which is just a functioning central contact point which enables all different producers, TV, film, photography and online gaming to come to us and say, we want to shoot somewhere, where can we go? And then to farm back to the councils those opportunities as they come in. So and the ones up on the kind of screen there, there's various ones up and down the country. We looked very closely at Ealing because that is kind of the Western borough that is the most successful at doing this historically. Ealing Film Office had been running for about 27 years when we set up and we'd worked a lot with them. And so looking at their model, and a consultant who used to work for them came to help us set up the office at the very beginning. We're looking at a lot of the London councils because mostly we're going to be getting London people moving out westwards. So you can have a look at lots of different film office websites, but essentially it's usually a website, a contact point, and a signposting facility that offers locations and other supporting information. So locations, facilities, which might be cast, might be crew, might be equipment, and scouting and what we call fixing. Scouting and fixing is a big subsector of the industry. It's basically people who know the lay of the land, know the local areas, know the businesses, know the services, the locations, and will problem solve on the fly during a major big production. Multi-million-pound productions have several fixers, and we're trying to develop a talent base of fixers in Berkshire. So already we're utilising a lot of the very knowledgeable council officers who are essentially acting as fixers, and that's something hopefully we can develop and grow. We actually set up a project with a government agency called Screen Skills and Pine Ridge Studios, which is running this weekend, where we invited people who work in other areas of different sectors. So it could be council officers working in asset management or traffic control. It could be accountants working for themselves in an accountancy practice. and we brought them to Pinewood Studios, or we encouraged them to come to Pinewood Studios this weekend and to understand what we need from them, like what skills that they have that are useful in the film industry. And we're trying to kind of target purely people living in Berkshire. So I think we had about 50 people we managed to get from council networks and from business networks who have booked onto that free training course this weekend to see how Berkshire existing businesses can generate more revenue from working within the film industry. So scouting and fixing is a massive gap and something that we all have local knowledge and can contribute to. We also, as a film office, we offer access to training and funding. That links back to our mainstream activity at Resource Productions. So that's already happening. For us, the big outcome is that we are reaching a broader audience who may become better aware of the training and the funding that we do offer, and that we open up that doorway to our young talent coming through. And also people retraining or mid-career, or who didn't realise that they're going into London and Soho to work every day, but they live in this locality, to make sure that they have access to local training and funding in Berkshire. Making sure that all of the productions as well can access statutory services. With 6 different unitary authorities, I think just the other day, Lily got an inquiry through the office. I'll introduce Lily, who's on our stand at the moment. You can give a wave, Lily, at the back. She's our film officer. She's got a black t-shirt on with a logo of a clapperboard on it. And they wanted to film in all 6 unitary authorities on the same day. Now, if you can imagine, as a business owner, if you had to call 6 different councils to get permission to do what you're viewing as one shoot in Berkshire, you're just not going to shoot in Berkshire. So the big problem that we saw coming up again and again was people calling our production office to say, how do you shoot in Berkshire? Because I need to cross the road and I'm going from Slough to Eton, and apparently I've got to get two people to sign off on paperwork. It's a nightmare. So what we're trying to do is to just bridge that opportunity and then make it a lot easier for all of these productions and producers to access that service. Because some of them literally just want to stand on a road and shoot, as we just saw. And they need permission, and they might only spend £100, but actually they're going to need catering that day, which is going to benefit the local catering. They're going to use taxi services in the area. They're going to need costumes. They're going to hire probably a local makeup artist. They probably will need a venue to stick everything in. They'll probably need to use parking. But if we don't take their £50 or £100 or £300 and make it easy for them to shoot on that street, we lose all of that revenue. So that's what a film office does, in short, is try and help productions shoot in an area a lot easier, and to encourage them to come back, shoot safely, not annoy the residents, and generate as much revenue as possible for the local economy and the council. So, council film services that we have been looking at with some of the council officers across all the different councils are just simple permissions to film, as I just described. I need to shoot on a road. Do you give me permission? Yes, but I'm going to have to spend some time administrating that, so here's what it's going to cost. That's the most basic. Licensing, so other departments of the councils have been having conversations with us about child licensing. We ourselves do a lot of that as a production company, work with a lot of children, so getting those permissions for them to be allowed to perform as actors, making sure the correct permits are in place, chaperone licenses, things like that. We rely on councils to support that process, and hopefully we're getting a sort of common understanding of how that works across Berkshire. Locations, so councils have lots of locations, and we're trying to make sure we can get a pricing structure in place so that across Berkshire we have the most diverse range of locations, and that we, instead of competing, unitary against unitary, we can go, well, this place has these kinds of parks, this place has these kinds of units. Let's use what we have across the breadth of Berkshire. Traffic management, parking, shutting roads down, all of that's quite complex. The councils are, the only people that can do that for a production company. And ultimately, what's good for ourselves as councils, for civic pride, for understanding placemaking, is to be able to tell the story of an area. And if we can utilise some of these films, some of these opportunities, some of these TV programmes to talk about the area in a positive way, then press is also a massive part of what we hope to support councils with as that goes on and we get more productions coming in. So this is just a little idea of charges. Just to give you an idea, if you do have any kind of location, then at the moment you could be renting anything out, from a spare bedroom. We go on Airbnb at the moment and try and track down people's spare bedrooms for our next shoot. You can be renting out, an empty space, a shed, a garage, for £100 a day, say, all the way up to a whole property or a specialist venue or location with on-site facilities for around £3,000 to £5,000 a day. The most I've seen is around £10,000 a day for an area, and it just depends what your unique asset is. And your unique asset may be something that you think is really awful and no one would ever want. It's just what is needed by that production. So that's something to think about, because one of the reasons that we're here today is also to look at businesses and how they might benefit. And in terms of moving forward with the Film Office, we are a not-for-profit, so Resource Productions takes no money from any of these transactions. We purely signpost on to the councils, who do hopefully cover their costs at least and hopefully make a little bit of money. The next level will be, how do we make this sustainable in the interim? And the only way we can make it sustainable is to start to look at revenue generation streams. And the two main ways that a Film Office generates revenue is with private commercial services being listed alongside the public ones. And so today we are inviting anyone in Wokingham, and it's only Wokingham we're testing it with, if they would like their services to be listed free of charge on our website and would like to go through that process with us to test out the commercial viability of a listings for production services, then please come and see Lily over there and sign up your business. It could be a one-person business that is around accountancy. It could be someone wants to be a supporting artist and they want to put their name down for that. Or it could be that you run a catering business and you want to be listed up there. We've had lots of hotels inquire and kind of catering services, but we've not put any on our website yet. We want to trial it with Wokingham, put a few businesses up there, see if you get any bookings, no charge, no cost, and then look at how we might commercialise that going forward with your feedback and input. So that's my main offer here today to get you involved, is to spread the word about that, and it's purely linked to today and whoever we can get on board to start trialling that. So basically, a little bit of context in terms of the industry, just to make you aware that $2 billion a year average in 2017 of inward investment is generated just through film and high-end TV alone. It's actually bigger than the automotive industry. So this is something that, as part of the culture of Berkshire going forward, we really need to look at strategically. And a few things that we've missed in the past. Do have a look at some of the press around Berkshire and things that are filmed here. These are all filmed in Berkshire, however we didn't manage to capture the revenue because they went with private locations and they couldn't liaise properly with different councils. So there's a lot that we could be getting. And that's our web address there. So at the bottom, berkshirefilmoffice.co.uk. It's live, you can have a look on our stand over there. Meet Lily, who's our film officer, who also is an apprentice with the BBC. You can have a look at what's going on. That's it.
Thank you very much indeed, Dominic.
One of the things about being a sort of tail end Charlie here, and also not knowing quite what's going before you. Sorry, shall I?
Okay.
Yeah, that's it. Is that okay?
Yep.
Can you hear me? Is that it's just been interesting to hear the last three presentations from Graham and Charlotte and Don, not knowing what's coming before. So I'm going to talk to you in a much more specific way, but it's interesting to draw in a lot of what they've been saying in detail, just as a general thing. So let me start off by saying my name's Robin Cox. I'm not a councillor. I don't work for Wokingham Borough Council, and I'm retired from business. So I'm wondering, and perhaps you are as well, quite what I'm doing here today. But I'd like to take a few minutes to talk about putting together an arts and culture strategy for Wokingham. Let me just see if I can work this. So, first thing is, perhaps it's because I chair the Art Society at Wokingham, and I've been talking to quite a few of you over there about it. If you don't know, it's one of the largest, not the Wokingham branch, but the overall branch of the Art Society. It's one of the largest arts appreciation organisations across the UK. Have some 90,000 members, some 380 societies based in the UK. And this is the Wokingham one. We have 250 members here, very active society. And it gives me a pretty good overview of what local residents enjoy from architecture, music, theatre, fine arts, whatever it is comes under the heading of arts. It might be because in my career, my business career, I was used to writing strategic plans to develop businesses. Or perhaps it's because I've been working on a campaign for more public art across the borough, whilst the borough is going through so many physical changes. But perhaps it's none of these. It's just that I, as a long-term resident of Wokingham, I'm passionate about getting it recognised as a cultural destination, with all the benefits that come from that for business and for residents. So what you're going to get now is my personal take on why we need an arts and culture strategy in Wokingham. So first, some general points. It's my view that arts and culture define the place we live in. They celebrate our identity and increase opportunities. They promote our heritage and help communities and business grow. I want Wokingham to embrace, promote and maximise its skills, talents and interests right across the borough, making it an exciting place to live, to study, to visit and to do business. I want you and everyone else to be in Wokingham. But, don't we have a lot of arts and cultural activities in Wokingham? Graham mentioned this earlier already. So here are just a few of the logos of some of the local groups and societies involved. It's a huge range of groups, societies already enhancing enjoyment in art, theatre, music, etc. And that indicates just how engaged our local communities are in cultural matters and how much that is appreciated by residents. And Wokingham today has that going for it already. But how much more could we do if it all came under the umbrella of a joined up strategy which encouraged communications, growth, business development, and I've got to say fun as well. For example, groups and societies here often act in isolated silos, making it difficult to go ahead with new initiatives. An agreed and focused framework would help get rid of that silo effect. And let me just give you a very small illustration. This charming work up here, until recently, was the only piece of public art in Wokingham town. And you struggle to find it. I don't know how many people know Wokingham very well. It's outside the library, in fact. But it's the only piece that we have. So let me just go where I was going. And a small group of us have been trying to encourage more public art, while the town regeneration and the development of the many houses are happening. It's one thing to be known for all the new houses and shops, which are great. I mean, I agree with Graham, it's been a fantastic development period, and certainly it's something Wokingham can be proud of, in spite of some of the difficulties there. But surely it's so much better to be known for an attractive and exciting place to be as well. Now, unfortunately, and I think it is unfortunate, no public art, for instance, was built into the plans for the town developments, which I believe was an oversight. But in spite of that, we have managed to get a sponsored mosaic trail underway in the town, and thanks to Gwyneth Hewitson and the effort that she's put in to get that going, and we're still going with that. But it's been hard work to get traction for more public art, as there is no overall agreed policy for it, unlike some of our neighbouring towns, and you heard very much about Henley there. And initiatives are necessarily ad hoc, without an agreed theme or focus. Now, just as a bit of late-breaking news, and I was talking to one of the councillors here just a minute ago, we've just heard that we're going to be able to put our first piece of sculpture onto Elms Park, as it will be, Elmsfield as was, and that's sponsored by the Wokingham Society. So I'm very pleased that we've made that start in that, and hopefully you can do more. What's needed now is a clear understanding of what we're trying to achieve so that we can work in lockstep with the growth of our communities. And don't let's miss these opportunities. Dawn was talking about being of a time in terms of what she was saying. It's an exciting time to be around, and we should take advantage of that. Now, for businesses particularly, a vibrant local cultural and art background can make Wokingham an even better place to live and work for employees. And these are fairly obvious statements, but I'll make them. They like being associated, employees like being associated with a buzzy and interesting environment. There's a clear buy-in to wanting to remain and contribute to the place. And that makes for satisfied and enthusiastic employees. And in addition, Britain's creative industries are a crucial part of our future economy, and Wokingham needs to encourage that creativity and take advantage of it. Now, you've heard quite a lot of this from Charlotte and also from Graham as well, but I'll repeat it because it is worth repeating. Last year, this sector contributed over 100 billion, you heard that, to the economy. It employed more than 2 million people. In fact, there's some estimates that put it at nearer to 3. And it grew 3 times as fast as the economy as a whole. The government is committed to this, pumping a lot of investment in that you've heard already. And as Graham pointed out, the expectation is that within 5 years, that sector will be contributing 150 billion pounds and creating, in that 5 years, 600,000 new jobs. We've mentioned all of them before, but film, TV, radio, music, photography, fashion, advertising, architecture, museums, gallery, goes on and on and on. The one I'd like to point out particularly, and it was mentioned earlier, are the digital creative industries, which are really growing at a pace and can grow in some ways independently of the location themselves. So the question is, why not Wokingham? It is a great place to invest. Graham mentioned the connectivity here. I'm going to look at a slightly different example, not knowing where you guys were coming from, and particularly what Don was saying, but I'm going to go over to Belfast, because it's well away from us. It's a different type of city, but it's encouraged the film industry as part of its own regeneration. And for the last 9 years, you might have known that Game of Thrones was made in Belfast. Let me just do that. Sorry. There we go. Game of Thrones was made over there. It was 9 years of employment and building up that activity, and off of that has come Line of Duty, another very successful series, Derry Girls, there's lots of it. But the whole media thing, as we've mentioned in other aspects, around Belfast has been a massive regeneration. There are now tours of the place, there's a whole industry going on. I noticed in the paper this weekend there's an exhibition of costumes coming out of Game of Thrones, which is being advertised in the local museum there. And Netflix, which is mentioned on the Derry Girls one there, and you just heard this from Don, they're looking for increased production space in the UK because of the available skills and cost-effective resources. And I don't know whether it's signed actually, but I've got down here, because I read it in the paper last week, they were just about to sign a 10-year deal with Pinewood. And as we've heard, Pinewood is pretty local to us and spins off in that area. So wouldn't it be great if Wokingham could encourage a media industry in its own area, supported by that cultural environment for its employees? I mean, for a start, we've even got our own homegrown movie star. If you don't recognise Nicholas Hoult from Ranelagh School, it's Nicholas. So, exciting times indeed. And I just want to put a personal thought into this, because some of you know that I've been associated with some of the education in the area for some time. Whilst the government, and this is personal, but whilst the government states, and I read this, the UK's creative industry are an economic powerhouse, and we are committed to building on its huge strength. it must make a similar investment educationally and dramatically increase its encouragement of the arts in schools and colleges. I mean, recently there's been a move away from arts education in favour of STEM subjects, and I'm certainly not going to knock STEM subjects. I'm a physicist myself, so I'm from that background. But I was at a conference recently that Sir Roy Strong was talking at, and he makes the comment there, preparing people for the next generation must involve supporting the arts. So let me just try and put that all in a Wokingham context. What does an arts and culture strategy give you? Well, first of all, from the very process of writing it, putting it down on paper, getting it signed off by all, and that includes the council as well as stakeholders in the whole area, you get agreed objectives, discussed and signed off. You get recognition that, you know, to make this work, you actually need investment and you need manpower. You know, you can't do this just by volunteers and goodwill. It's got to be a clear strategy that you invest in. And something that's important to me within this strategy is it gives you measurable outcomes. So you can judge how the whole thing's progressing and adjust the policy. We can then work together to get the maximum benefits from Wokingham's cultural growth, like encouraging economic growth, encouraging better utilisation of existing activities through focused communication, and encouraging new initiatives. So I'm going to just list out for you, I know you've had enough words and slides now, so I'm finishing fairly shortly, but I'm just going to list out for you what I consider to be the 5 overarching goals for a strategy that we need. So the first one is developing a sense of place, and again you've heard that very clearly from previous speakers, strengthening the borough's cultural identity and uniqueness through cultural regeneration. Encouraging economic growth, which is something that's very important to all of us, facilitating cultural activity and investment in the creative industries, which positively affect local businesses and the local economy. Strengthening our communities, using culture to combat isolation, build local capacity, and improve community cohesion. Again, something I'm personally very keen on. Let's talk a little bit about that. We need to strengthen our communities using culture to combat isolation, build local capacity, and improve community cohesion. And maximising partnerships, bringing different organisations together to maximise resources, reduce costs and attract investment. Partnerships and networks build relationships across culture, civic life, business and education. And last but not least, supporting health and well-being, encouraging participation in arts and culture which significantly impacts people's health and well-being. Again, you heard a bit of that earlier. I only need to cite some examples, like it's well known what that does for people with dementia problems. As my mum used to say, fine words butter no parsnips, so we need a plan. And work has already started on arts and culture strategy in the council, but this is exactly the point where we need the maximum input from all stakeholders in Wokingham. And it's now everyone's chance to contribute as the policies are now crystallising. So let's see if by the end of today we can capture some priorities and concepts from you to contribute a clear strategy for arts and culture, and one that reflects your thoughts and your needs to get more out of our communities, and at the same time to create a vibrant and exciting Wokingham where people want to live and work and set up new business. However off the wall your ideas, let's hear them. In my experience, creative thinking is something that business people do very well. This really is your opportunity. Let's see if we can make the most of it today. Thank you.
Okay, so we had some really interesting feedback. The first thing that we felt that we needed to do to grow the cultural offer in Wokingham Borough was to create an arts and cultural strategy, and that everybody needed to buy into that. So we need stakeholders from members to senior officers to businesses all to endorse that as a move forward in Wokingham. It was noted by a number of people that we need a longer term vision. Very often we'll write a strategy and then because of changes to the council or for whatever reason, it becomes abandoned. So we needed to take that long-term approach in terms of that. There's already a lot of things happening. That was notable from what everybody was saying. There's a lot going on. And a continual sort of theme running through is that we needed a coordinated approach and that we need a way or a platform of bringing everything together so that people can see what's going on, because there was also the feeling that people didn't know that things were happening and there was continual surprise that there was so much happening in the borough. In terms of engaging with businesses, there was talk about doing a PID, which is a business improvement district project in our various towns and villages, potentially with an arts theme. They were talking about creating a forum with businesses on that so that we could learn from businesses. We felt there was an awful lot of untapped expertise within businesses. We also needed to appreciate that whatever events are on are targeted at different target audience, so any marketing or promotion we do, that we need to take that into account. A particularly interesting conversation we had about the shared forum that we need, or the shared marketing platform that we were looking at, is some of the advances that's being made in technology recently, and it certainly came out of Charlotte's talk earlier, where the Henley Festival is getting more involved in using smart technology and innovation to communicate what's going on. We had a very, very interesting conversation about immersive technology. So it might be something that we might have a virtual museum, or we might have tasters online, or reached out to people. Questions at the end?
No, it's not a question. We've got a virtual museum.
Oh, have we?
In existence.
Sorry, we would take the virtual museum and we would apply immersive technology to entice people to look at it.
Whatever.
Thank you. So, importance of speaking to young people as well was emphasised. But the importance really for businesses, the need to create a place where there's plenty of happening, there's a strong vibe, and the fact that we're helping people's mental health, their work-life balance, and the fact that they need to retain and attract staff, and we felt that art and culture was really important to that. So the final solution we've come up with is actually a box office facility using tech to make sure that everybody can book their tickets for all the events in Wokingham.
I don't know if you can see, but Rhiannon has a lovely, very full page of notes, and I have just a few. So mine's all on the table. I didn't get one of those. But we had some of the same ideas. The idea of an arts and culture strategy, and my table it was stressed quite heavily that it be outcome-based and not just a policy document that is written and sits on a shelf and then we don't do anything with it or don't do much with it. And also that we could look at the other authorities in Berkshire to see what they're doing with their strategies, because they're all working on them as well. We also had not just a bid district, but an A-bid district, an arts business improvement district, so that it, years ago we did have a move towards trying to create a business improvement district in Wokingham town, and it didn't get very far, and there's perhaps not an appetite for it at the moment. But if businesses were able to, and our arts organizations were able to push it as a business improvement district for the arts, that might give it the spin that would make it something that could be supported by our local businesses. And then we had really the most interesting idea, I think, was the idea of a portal that the Borough Council could facilitate, that would bring together businesses and arts and culture organizations that need, the businesses that have opportunities to sponsor in different way, and the organizations that need some sort of sponsorship so that they could match their needs with what businesses have to offer. And some of the suggestions for that were coaches that any of the large businesses might have coaches that they pick up their employees at the local train stations, other hubs. Those aren't in use in the evenings or on the weekends when there are different sorts of arts and culture events going on that they could be used. That businesses also might have venues that could be used in the evenings or on weekends, and their employees could also provide some volunteer support for different events, and so on. So some sort of a portal that brought those two things together, where businesses could look and see, these people need some sort of transportation for this event, and this organization needs a venue for an event, and then the organizations could look at who has those things available. And then we also talked quite a bit about the council's role in all of that as being a facilitator and having a community leadership role, which came from our new leader. So it's a good point that it is up to the Borough Council to facilitate and to lead that sort of enriching our lives through the arts and cultures in our towns, towns and villages and communities. I think that was really it.
Okay, thank you very much.
So lots of interest and discussion on my table. There was quite a bit around doing more promotion of what's happening, so people are aware there's quite a lot going on within Wokingham Borough, but we just need a bit more kind of like marketing, potentially having a kind of like Wokingham Borough brand around that. And then about making events more of an experience, so looking at things maybe like outdoor cinema, having like drive-ins and so on, and something where maybe businesses could sponsor that. There was talk around having a directory of cultural groups and organisations and maybe kind of signposting people to where they can get help or advice and so on. So we could list kind of businesses who may be interested in the arts or kind of like local cultural practitioners and so on. Then we talked about the need for developing a creative industry in Wokingham Borough, something like the Bristol kind of waterfront area and those kind of supply chains feeding into that. Then talking about the investment in the cultural offer and maybe having something like investing in an external events company who could put those events on. People mentioned before around the kind of the arts bid, so that was kind of a key thing there. And then an education piece around what the borough is trying to achieve and what it's about. And understanding the target audience as well, so maybe talking to schools and colleges about what they want to see and trying to do something around that.
Okay, yeah, so my tables also have some really fantastic ideas, just to run through a few of them. So there was a really strong support for showcasing our cultural heritage and our civic pride, so some work around that in terms of arts and culture. There was a discussion around some really good independent artisan venues, so that businesses in the borough have a venue to take clients and international business people when they're visiting the area. There's another vote for a box office, I think it was termed in the last feedback. So an events listing, something central where people can go to and look at what's going on in the borough, get tickets, all of that stuff. There's another vote for that. We had some discussions around a co-working hub, so for smaller businesses to have access to a kind of shared facility to network and bring together different people. We had lots of discussion around diversity and inclusion, so really bringing sort of our diverse communities into the borough and celebrating them. So dance, music, food, looking at the artwork of young people, all of that sort of stuff was really supported. We had some discussions around pop-up venues, particularly in the new town as well, so using some of our new spaces to showcase things like jazz and comedy and craft and all of those sorts of things as well. So yeah, lots of really good ideas.
Okay, anyone want to add anything that they feel wasn't captured? No?
Yes,
Okay.
so question 3 was, what else do we need to do to make Wokingham Borough a destination borough for businesses? So a lot of the notes are still on the table, but from the ones that I've taken off the table, digital connectivity was a really big thing. So making sure Wi-Fi, fibre, broadband was everywhere. There was a lot of sort of comments about it needing improving, especially in sort of the more rural areas, because obviously that's a really important, like digital tech is all over Wokingham Borough, so making sure that businesses have the infrastructure that they need. there was a lot of talk, in fact all 3 rounds brought up the need for more hotels in the borough, spaces for people when businesses are holding events for other businesses across the country. They need places for people to stay who are coming to the events, and sort of event space and conference space within those hotels is really important and something that we're sort of lacking at the moment. And then there was some talk about the sort of feeling of comfortable culture, we called it. So things like health and fitness, gyms, food, drinks, hotels, just making Woking Borough a place that you want to be before, after and during work, not just during work. So that was the sort of gist of it.
So I think really similar things came out on this table as well. Some additional points, I suppose, being really clear about our offer, particularly not only in Wokingham Town but in the towns and parishes and the new developments as well. Again, better digital communication came up a lot. And then again, really celebrating our successes, such as the town centre and the improvements there. And in particular, thinking about PR and whether we need some more expertise within the council to actually promote Wokingham as a destination, whether that's procuring it through an external company or what we need to do. And again, a genuine understanding of what businesses need would help with that. And again, exposure, really where we can, promoting Wokingham as a destination.
Thank you very much. So thank you very much for giving your valuable time today. Our commitment to you is we've hosted this event in order to hear what you've got to say, and we will incorporate as best we can all those things that you said, whether they're written down on the tablecloths, whether they're drawn in pictorial form, whatever version, whether they're captured on the film or whether they're the facilitator's notes. We will use all of this data, all of this intelligence to inform our strategy, and as said earlier, it's not just about a strategy on a bit of paper, it's about what changes on the ground. What difference do we see and feel and experience in our community? So that's our commitment to you. We will capture this, we will relay that back to you, and then you will see, for those of you turn up next year for our 3rd annual World Cafe, it will have a piece in, you said this and we've done that, and we'll take the conversation on from there. But clearly, outside of this room, as we go away, we need to progress what we can as quickly as we can within the resources we have, but collectively wherever possible, because we know quite often it's not just about a single organisation taking something forward. So thank you all very much indeed, and we, like I say, we will take this forward and make sure that your energy, your enthusiasm and your contribution isn't forgotten. John Wilson. You have to speak into it.
Does that work? No. Well, first of all, I must apologise for not being here first thing this morning. I was trying to make the best use of our Prime Minister whilst she's still in post for our borough. And I was the executive member for the environment last year, so I picked up this portfolio as part of my responsibilities. And one of the big issues which I have lain awake at night pondering over, which is, what does arts and culture mean? And it's really very simple. As Thomas and Jefferson described it, it's the pursuit of happiness. So we should, as a local council, a community leader, be looking for ways in which we can better our residents' happiness and well-being. And that's what arts and culture means. We are a funny organisation in Woking Borough because we have 17 towns and parishes, and those 17 towns and parishes encompass an enormous number of things. Superficially, one assumes that Wokingham Town is the centre of it all, Well, it really isn't, because our biggest centre of population is Earley and Woodley, which most people consider as Reading. We are known industrially for being the Silicon Valley of the UK. Most people don't know that Thames Valley Park is actually in Wokingham, nor that Reading University is in Wokingham. So it's a disparity which is a very common misnomer. We have the premier rowing regatta in England, or even in the world, in Wokingham. As Charlotte Gibbs said, Henley Festival is in Wokingham. And for our sins, we have Rewind in Wokingham as well, which so it's a huge disparity of things. One of the things that we did commit to do last year was that, picking up from here, was to address the aspect of the criticism that Wokingham Borough was a cultural desert. Well, it isn't. There's a huge number of things going in Wokingham Borough which people don't really know about. I was surprised to hear that we have 800 or 900 football teams, which is huge, absolutely huge. We have pressure on pitches for women's football, which is absolutely unknown. So one of the commitments we made last year was to bring that all together and to try and find a way of having a calendar and be an electronic directory which is maintained by our newly formed localities teams. You probably don't know that our libraries will be the borough in the localities in the future, and every day they're becoming more so. So they'll be able to tap into that. And we also have a commitment to try and have a Wokingham Town Festival, which will encompass pretty much anybody who wants to encompass it south of the M4 in 2022, which is hopefully when our building works will end. In terms of attracting business to the locality, I think one of the things we must do most of all is to try and resolve the congestion problem, because one of the issues on most people's minds is getting there and parking there, which is a real problem. And connectivity, I think we're going to have to work harder, because our partner, which we were hoping would connect the most rural areas or the least connected areas, which is GigaClear, has been hopeless in terms of their delivery. So something like 50% of the borough is really very poorly served by connectivity. There are solutions which we're working on, and I think we can deliver in the course of a very short time. So the message is that 17 towns and parishes all have a different flavour. There's lots of going on, and we really need to try and make it more accessible, more apparent. And before I close and thanking you for coming and giving you all your ideas, I am committed, because I have been bullied throughout the course of the day, to get a cultural arts strategy, at least by the time I come here next year. And I wouldn't be able to come here next year without that. So thank you very much for coming.